The 2015 Ravens. What a strange season it was for them. So going into the year, everyone thought, including me, that the Ravens were going to be a Super Bowl contender. They looked primed and ready to go. However, the season was a complete disaster, as the team regressed to finish 5-11. It was the first time they missed the playoffs, didn't have a win season since 2007. One of only 2 times since 2007 the Ravens had a losing season, as that does not happen that frequently, as we know. And the reason why they had a losing season was also wild. Almost every loss they had, they were within 1 score. Not only that, a lot of their losses, they had the lead going into the 4th quarter, I think. But then they still blew in the end. So, was the Ravens in 2015 really a bad team, or were they just choking stuff away in close games where they just couldn't pull it off and such? So, you know what? I decided to do a theory on this. Let's see the different scenarios for the 2015 Ravens and how wild it could have been. So here we go. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if? An NFL theory. So in this theory, I wanted to cover the absurdity that is the 2015 Ravens. I have another theory coming up right soon after, eventually on the 2021-2022 Vikings and their absurdity too, but I figured I'd start off here in the year's order and such. So, the 2015 Ravens, as we know, went 5-11. However, all of their losses, well, almost all their losses, were close games. So, if they had 11 losses, how many of them were within 8 points? 9. That's right. Of their 11 losses, 9 of them were within 8 points. Their only losses that were not within that 8 points were back-to-back losses to the Seahawks and the Chiefs. They lost to the Chiefs 34-24, debuting those ugly uniforms. And then they lost the Seahawks the week before, I think by like 35-7 or something like that. Their only blowout losses that year. But every other loss afterward, every other loss was within a score. So, if the Ravens, you say, flip this and won every single one of these losses that were close losses, you know what that means they would be? They would be 14-2, which is amazing for how close they could have been. But there's another angle we have to look at this too, and that is their losses. Not their losses, their wins. Because they won 5 games. How many of them were very close, within 8 points? Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but all 5. Yep, all 5 of their games were within a score. And of course, one of them being an overtime victory against the Steelers, and then the fluky, wild kick 6 game where they blocked a field goal from the Browns on Monday night that would have given them the win, and they took the kick all the way back for a touchdown to win the game. Just wild luck there. So, what if it was reversed and they lost all their games that they won that were close? Well, they would have gone 0-16. Just think about this, guys. You have the 2015 Ravens. On one extreme, they could have been 14-2, and on the other end, they could have been 0-16. And of course, they ended up being closer to 0-16 than 14-2. So yeah, that is wild. So I figured for this video, how about we do that? Let's do 2 theories, 2 scenarios of where the extremes on both ends happen. Where the Ravens go all the way to 14-2, and then the other one where they go all the way down to 0-16. Alright, so let's get started with them going all the way. So here we go. Here is the scenario. If the Ravens won all the games that they lost, they were close. Of course, they would still lose to the Seahawks and the Chiefs, but their wins, they would get an extra win from the Steelers. They would get an extra win, both their wins on the Bengals. They would sweep the Browns, they get an extra win on them. They would beat the Dolphins. They would beat the Jaguars. They would beat the Broncos and the Raiders, the Cardinals, the Rams, and the 49ers. as the Rams are still 6-7-9 on this thing instead of 6-10, but just ignore that. That's since they're not even in the playoffs. So, what's the scenario right now in this situation? Well, the Ravens are the number 1 seed. The Patriots fall to the number 2 seed. The Chiefs now win the AFC West as they're the 3rd seed. Texans are still the 4th seed. Broncos fall to the 5th seed, and the Steelers still remain as the 6th seed. And the NFC, nothing changes at all. So we start off in the wild card in the AFC side with the Steelers, instead of visiting the Bengals, visit the Chiefs. And the Steelers lost the Chiefs earlier in the year, and the Chiefs they're on 10-game win streak started when they played the Steelers. And they were on the rolls we saw when they destroyed the Texans. So I think in this timeline, they would continue that and beat the Steelers. And then the next matchup, of course, is the Broncos visiting the Texans. Now, Peyton, I'm not sure. I think Peyton would probably play this game because, remember, in real life, they had the number 1 seed, so they didn't play in Week 1. And Peyton, of course, finally started playing in the end of the Week 17 game. So they probably would give him the start in this game. But either way, the Broncos, with their elite defense, would destroy the Texans just like the Chiefs did. So now we're on to the divisional round. So then it'll be the Broncos visiting the Ravens, a rematch from Week 1, which in this timeline, the Ravens actually win instead of losing in their close defensive struggle. But of course, the Ravens, even though they're 14-2, they're still not really good. They just got lucky in these scenarios to win all their games. So they're a very weak 14-2 team. Go up against a team that did beat them, remember, in real life. And I think, sorry Ravens, I think the Broncos would get their revenge and win a defensive struggle. And since the Chiefs still have to visit the Patriots, in the end, the AFC side remains the same, and since the NFC side remains the same, the Super Bowl outcome remains the same. So damn, the Ravens going all the way in a good way does not change anything. Yikes. But there's still one more theory. Oh boy. What if we go all the way to the other extreme? What if the Ravens lose every single one of their games that they won? Alright, so here it is. If the Ravens went all the way to 0-16, which is all their games they won, they now lose since all 5 of their wins were close ones. So now an extra win goes to the Browns, the Steelers, the Chargers, the Rams, and the other team won't come to my head for some reason. I don't know why. But that is how it sets up to be and such. As now, in the AFC, due to tiebreakers between the Steelers, Patriots, and Broncos. Oh yeah, second win, that extra win was to the Steelers. The Ravens swept them that year, which is quite surprising. Either way, with this tiebreaker between the Steelers, Patriots, and Broncos now have to be in mind, it's the Patriots that now have the number 1 seed, as the Steelers move up to the number 2 seed, and the Broncos fall all the way down to the 3rd seed, and the Bengals fall all the way down to the 5th seed. Meanwhile, nothing changes in the NFC still. Alright, so now we begin in the wild card round, of course, as the Broncos now have to host the Chiefs. Now, of course, the Chiefs are on the roll, and remember when they absolutely obliterated the Broncos earlier in the year that ended Peyton's regular season pretty much in his infamous 4-interception game. But of course, he'll be playing probably like I theorized earlier in the wildcard round. Man, the Broncos' unstoppable defense going up against a Chiefs team that just seems to not be stopped by anything at the moment. This is a tough one to predict. But I think the Chiefs' momentum is going to continue and they're going to beat the Broncos to prevent them from getting their Super Bowl. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the bracket, the Bengals now have to visit the Texans. And what will be a defensive struggle, as the Bengals don't have Andy Dalton, and they're going to go up against the Texans team. And we saw what happened when those Texans team played the Chiefs. They got the shit kicked out of them. Well, that might not happen quite the same way with the Bengals not being as good. They're still probably going to win convincingly still. Then once the Chiefs lose to the Patriots, and I still think the Steelers will beat the Bengals, even if potentially Andy Dalton comes back, the AFC Championship is now the Steelers at the Patriots. The rematch of the kickoff game, as this would be a battle between two teams that are kind of real. And the Patriots, of course, their O-line is struggling. The Steelers have a banged-up Big Ben, no Le'Veon Bell, no Antonio Brown. This is not looking good for either team, but I think the Patriots are in a better shape otherwise. So I think they will win just like they did in Week 1. Which then sets up the Super Bowl, the Patriots versus the Panthers, the rematch of 12 years later. As I just covered in my theory recently, if Drew Brees wins to the Dolphins, I think the Patriots are going to win. I really don't think the Panthers are probably going to win any Super Bowl unless they play like someone really bad, because the Panthers really did shit the bed in that Super Bowl. So, Patriots, you got to thank the Ravens now for going 0-16, because of that, you got the Super Bowl instead of the Broncos. Gee, maybe the Broncos should be lucky that the Ravens imploded the way they did. But there you go. That's what I think would happen if the Ravens imploded or went all the way. But hey, it's just a theory, an NFL theory. Thanks for watching. As I got a couple very short theories I'm going to do coming up to get these out of the way, so expect these coming up very soon. So see you then.